Donovan Mitchell has officially became available from the Utah Jazz, and of course, all of the theories and rumors and speculations and teams are putting in packages to try to acquire Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, Kevin Durant, he's been the grand prize for quite some time, and many teams are in the pursuit of Kevin Durant. But there's still a lot of questions with him, right? The Brooklyn Nets, they want a superstar player or two all-star level players and, a bunch of draft picks. Like, the asking price is ridiculous for Kevin Durant at this point. And it's really unrealistic because any team that trades for Kevin Durant is likely going to have to blow up their roster to attain him, and then it's like, what's the point at that point? There's very few teams that can acquire Kevin Durant and still maintain that contender level status. But when it comes to Donovan Mitchell, the asking price is going to be a lot less. I'm sure it's still pretty hefty, but it's not going to be anywhere near what Kevin Durant is. But there was a trade proposal that was put out by ESPN, and it's a very interesting trade proposal that actually includes both of these players going to various locations. So I wanted to dive in to this trade report and then hear your thoughts and opinions. We'll break it down, all that stuff. So let's get into it. So right off the bat, you see the Brooklyn Nets would receive Donovan Mitchell, Bogdanovich, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and a 2023 first-round pick from Indiana via Boston. The Phoenix Suns would receive Kevin Durant and Miles Turner. And then the second leg of this would be the Utah Jazz received Joe Harris, Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas, Buddy Hield, 2023, 2025, and 2027 unprotected first-round picks via Phoenix, top 5 protected 2029 first-round picks, 2026, 2028 first-round pick swaps, and then the Pacers would receive DeAndre Ayton and Mike Conley. Now, right off the bat, let's break this down a little bit. So you might be thinking, like, all of the draft picks are going to the Utah Jazz. Like, wouldn't Brooklyn want more draft picks? But here's the thing. The difference between the two is that Utah, if they trade Donovan Mitchell, are on a full-blown, tank. Like, they are on a full-blown rebuild. They are starting from ground zero and building their way back up. Brooklyn is in the opposite situation. Brooklyn can't tank. Brooklyn can't rebuild because they don't own any of their own picks. So it would be better for them to get the more established players than to go and, get a bunch of draft picks to tank. So this package would give Brooklyn everything it needs to remain competitive for now and the future, things like that. So Brooklyn perspective, it makes all the sense in the world because you get a bunch of young, great quality talent that can keep you competitive for now. They're all young enough to grow and develop, and you're in a good position. You still get a 2023 first round pick in the whole deal, but you're getting the bulk of the quality players, which is what Brooklyn ultimately needs and wants. Depending on the picks, if you get a pick from the Phoenix Suns, the picks have no real value because they're not going to be lottery picks. They're going to end up being, the high picks. You're going to talk in the, 23rd pick in the draft, stuff like that. But in this case with Brooklyn, instead of having to gamble to go get those pieces, you now have them on your team and you can kind of start filling everything out. Not just that, but you still have the Kyrie trade. So basically you're getting rid of all three of your stars in this, because what's going to end up happening is that this happens, then Kyrie gets traded to the Lakers. But you're getting rid of Simmons, which isn't the end of the world, and you're getting rid of Kevin Durant, but you're recouping all of these players. You're recouping real prospects for the future that are young. You're getting wing players, all of that stuff. And from the Utah Jazz, you're in the rebuild stage, so you want those draft picks. You want that bevy of picks, and you don't mind taking on a contract like Joe Harris or Buddy Hield. And also you could, package some of these guys and go, make a trade for something else. You also get a starting point in Ben Simmons, stuff like that. This would definitely be a real blockbuster trade and would really shake up many parts of the NBA. I mean, I think that everybody is getting a quality trade here. I do. I really think, the Pacers are getting their guy. They're getting a guy in Mike Conley, stuff like that. We'll dive into that a little bit. But Brooklyn gets a bunch of young guys to restart their retooling, so to speak. The Phoenix Suns get their two guys, and then the Utah Jazz get to hit the restart button. But they also got some decent stuff. So this would definitely be a blockbuster. But let's dive into this more individually. So Phoenix is the easiest one, right? The Phoenix Suns, they get their guy in Kevin Durant. But they also get Miles Turner in this deal, which was always a big question. The big question is, okay, like say you do the 3-team deal and you send Miles Turner to the Brooklyn Nets, well then, who's going to be your center? And I've always said, like in response to that, well, luckily this free agency still has a bunch of cheap centers. They still have a bunch of, veteran minimum centers. None of them are to the level of Miles Turner. But you still have those centers. This would be huge for the Phoenix Suns if this trade were to shape up. Because not only are you getting Kevin Durant to replace Mikal Bridges, but you're also turning DeAndre Ayton into Miles Turner. Now, DeAndre Ayton, I think, is the better player overall, but I think Miles Turner is the better fit. And that's the big difference, because fit is everything here, especially when you got Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, and you got Devin Booker. You need that player that could be the fit. You don't need a center that's going to demand 20 touches a game. You don't need a center that can just score from anywhere on the court. You need a guy that can be the anchor of your defense, block shots, spread the floor. Everything that Miles Turner brings to the table is what the Phoenix Suns would need if they went and got Kevin Durant. This would be the grand slam of trades. I also think that this would make Phoenix the best team in the league from front to back. I mean, yeah, it's tough. You're losing Bridges, you're losing Cam Johnson, but at the end of the day, you are getting a great quality center and you're getting Kevin Durant. And I know a lot of Suns fans feel like you don't trade Mikal Bridges to get Kevin Durant. The Phoenix Suns will trade Mikal Bridges if it means getting Kevin Durant. There's a reason that they're the GMs. And they're the ones that run the league and the organization, because they understand how good Kevin Durant is, and they understand and they don't put their emotions and feelings for an individual player. We all have our favorite teams and we all have those biases towards those teams and those players, and we all think that young guy is going to be the next Michael Jordan, but in reality, it's not the case. Mikal Bridges is likely never going to be Kevin Durant. And if you could do this trade and give up Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges to get Miles Turner and Kevin Durant, you do that 10 times out of 10 times. Like, that is an easy grand slam, no problems, no questions asked type of trade. But moving on to Utah, right? So Utah, I think obviously they make out like bandits, right? Because yes, you get Joe Harris, 2-year contract, but you're in a rebuild. So his money's going to fall off the books in 2 years. You get a young guy in Ben Simmons who won't have the same pressures in Utah as he would in like Brooklyn or like he had in Philly, things like that. I mean, Jazz fans can be pretty wild, but when it comes to their players, they're very loved, especially if Ben Simmons can kind of get back into what he needs to get back into. The Jazz get Cam Thomas, another young guy that could have a lot of potential, things like that. And, could be a guy that could develop into something. Buddy Hield, again, another guy, a couple years on his contract, but would be a great trade chip. It's a guy that, teams like the Lakers are doing everything they can to go get on top of getting Kyrie Irving, stuff like that. So maybe you work out a deal, and maybe you would be willing at that point to take the Lakers' first-round draft pick. My big thing with the Jazz and the Lakers, right, because I've seen people throw out, well, why don't the Lakers try to get in on the Donovan Mitchell trade, stuff like that, because their draft picks aren't for another, 5 years. Like, if you're Utah, you're hoping you're not still rebuilding 5 years from now, right? So those draft picks, yeah, like maybe the Lakers, maybe they're good, but like you need stuff to help you rebuild now, not 5 years from now, where, if the Lakers are terrible in 5 years, then yeah, those picks would be gold, but the Utah Jazz are trying to do a different thing. From the Brooklyn Nets standpoint, those picks make a lot of sense because you're hoping that, you're kind of retooled, you're at least competitive, and then the Lakers suck. Well, then guess what? Now you get those draft picks, and you're going to add some like quality guys to your already established team. But maybe Utah, when it comes to trading Buddy Hield, maybe then in that case they'd be like, okay, well, we'll do that. But beyond the players that they're getting, which would just be salary relief in 2 years for the most part, and then you get a young guy in Ben Simmons, and then you have, Cam Thomas. But they get, the 2023, 2025, 2027 unprotected first-round picks. So you get 3 picks unprotected right off the bat. You get a fourth pick that is top 5 protected in 2029, and then a 2026 and 2028 first-round pick swaps. So you're getting essentially 6 picks in this deal, along with Ben Simmons, and you're in a rebuild. You're trying. This is like the perfect package for a team that is on the rebuild. And I know many people would probably look at this trade and go, well, the Jazz are getting the most out of anything. No, they're not. Because like I said, the Phoenix Suns are getting Kevin Durant. They're getting the best player in this deal. And usually the team that gets the best player wins this trade. But also, the Nets are getting a star, all-star player. They're getting a bunch of really nice young players. And this deal would probably be flipped if the Nets were in a different position. The Nets are making out like bandits because of the position that they're in. So I do think that this is a very different, very fair trade because Utah and Brooklyn are in 2 very different situations. So it makes sense for Utah to get the kind of like Keen's ransom draft picks, and the Nets get the Keen's ransom in players. That's how I perceive this. But now for the second leg of this, the Indiana Pacers, they get their guy and DeAndre Ayton, right? Who there's talks about the sign and trade, stuff like that. And then they're getting a guy in Mike Conley who could be a very good mentor for Halliburton, right? I mean, Mike Conley was solid. I think Halliburton has more potential than Mike Conley did, but Mike Conley's been a guy that's been in it. He's been through the grind. He's been to the Western Conference Finals with the Grizzlies back in the day. He was on that grind and pound type Grizzlies team. He's always been a solid point guard who's a veteran leader, all that stuff. Not just that, but it also clears cap space in a couple years for the Pacers, who are kind of, in a rebuild. But it also is a guy that they could use to trade. I mean, there are teams that would probably take Mike Conley come trade deadline, things like that. Just another asset for them to have. It is, I think the Mike Conley thing is a little bit, kind of like, why would we do that type thing? But outside of that, like there's value and there's reasons in Mike Conley. I don't think that it's like the Pacers would just be dying to get Mike Conley, especially if they're a rebuilding team, but could be another asset to go get you some other players, to get you some other pieces. And then the big prize is DeAndre Ayton, who the Pacers really want. There's been talks about the Pacers and the Suns have already agreed on a sign and trade. They're just waiting on Kevin Durant. And there's also a report that the Pacers are getting kind of tired of waiting around for Kevin Durant and might just offer DeAndre Ayton a sign sheet. And if that happens, then that throws a wrench in everything. But if you get this deal, you get your guy. Indiana's just kind of the throw-on team here. They're kind of just the ones which they would be to begin with. Even if this isn't the deal, even if the Jazz aren't in it, the Suns and the Nets are the real teams making the trade. The Pacers are just kind of the fill-in because they're the ones that want DeAndre Ayton, and the Brooklyn Nets can't take DeAndre Ayton. So yeah, you're giving up the Miles Turner, and he's going to the Phoenix Suns in this case. And you're giving up a 1 first, I believe. Yeah, you're giving up 1 first-round pick in this deal. So it's not a bad deal. And very likely they're going to have to give up a first-round pick anyway in this deal because, like I said, the Phoenix Suns, they could just sign them and then just trade them in January. So that's usually what happens. You usually have that leverage because I've seen people in the past when we've talked about the Pacers deal, people are like, why would the Pacers give a first-round pick when they could just sign Ayton outright? Because then you have the chance of losing him, and Miles Turner's a free agent, and you very likely might lose him, and so now you're stuck with nothing. You give up that first-round pick, you go get your center that you're going to have for the next 10 years. That's why you do that. You give up the first because now you have your core that you're building around for the rest of your future. That's why you give up the first. And then again, the Brooklyn Nets, this would be an absolute home run for the Brooklyn Nets because you're still competitive. You're still arguably a solid team in the Eastern Conference. You got a guy in Donovan Mitchell who could be your go-to scorer, who could be your guy. You got, Bogdanovich, who has shown he can be a solid starter in this league. You get Mikal Bridges, who he could turn into an absolute stud. We don't know. Right now, on the Suns, he is the, fourth option in some cases. He goes from being the fourth to likely the second option behind Donovan Mitchell. We might see a different Mikal Bridges, a guy who can play defense, knock down shots. Cam Johnson is another guy that has a lot of promise and has shown some real, hey, I belong in this league type moments. So he's another young guy. And then, you're getting your 2023 first round pick, which, it's from Indiana. So they're probably going to have, a mid-tier year. I know some Indiana fans think that if they get DeAndre Ayton, they could be a playoff team, which I wouldn't completely rule out in the Eastern Conference. So I don't know. From Brooklyn's standpoint, you can't tank. You can't rebuild. And this is about as good of a retool as it gets. You get 3 young players that you can build around for your future. Get a guy in Donovan Mitchell who's still young, who can be, the face of your franchise and really put up numbers and score. Like, you're going to at least be a playoff team with this, and you still have all of your other depth. You still have Seth Curry, still have Patty Mills. You still have Nick Claxton. You have all these guys to really put around this core that you have here, and I just think it's really beneficial. I think that if you're the Brooklyn Nets, this is the best package for you because you don't need all the draft picks. I know that they want the draft picks, but at the end of the day, you don't need those draft picks because you're a team that's not trying to rebuild. You're a team that's trying to retool. If the Brooklyn Nets had all of their draft picks, then yeah, or if they had this year's draft pick, then yeah, tank, trade the farm, get some young players, get a bunch of draft picks, and you're good. But no, they can't do that. So you don't need the picks from all these other teams that are going to be really good. And then now you're getting, mid-tier, and now you're really going for the lottery here. You're like, okay, well, hopefully the 20th pick in the draft turns out to be a star. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. Why when you can get proven commodities already? This would make all the sense in the world for the Brooklyn Nets. But, as always, this is a discussion, so I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think about this big blockbuster? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's fair for all sides? I mean, you have basically 3 stars being traded for. Ben Simmons goes to Utah. You got Donovan Mitchell going to the Brooklyn Nets, and you got Kevin Durant going to the Phoenix Suns. All teams are kind of going to a destination that they would like. I mean, Ben Simmons, he's the biggest question mark. But at least with this, you have a starting point if you're Utah, and that's key. You have a starting point in Ben Simmons. You hope Ben Simmons kind of can wake up and get himself together. But if you're Utah, you also don't need to rush that, right? So Ben Simmons' best destination might be Utah because they're going to be on a full-fledged rebuild. So Utah's probably not going to need Ben Simmons to play immediately. So Ben Simmons isn't all the way there, and he's kind of just like, I don't know what to do with myself type thing. Utah can kind of coddle him until he can kind of get into the swing of things and get back to being good. And then if you have Philly Ben Simmons, then now you have an excellent starting point, and you have all of these assets to go get other stars. You could likely jumpstart your rebuild. If you're the Utah Jazz, this would be great to put a package together to go get maybe a disgruntled star in the future. Whatever you want to do. Brooklyn, they get their guy. They get basically their asking price and more, right? Because instead of draft picks, you're getting proven commodities. And then, you're getting a guy in Donovan Mitchell. And whether they want Donovan Mitchell or not, I don't know why they wouldn't. But worst case scenario, you have Donovan Mitchell and you could just trade again and go get other assets to add to the assets you have. So, I mean, I think it would be a huge win for the Brooklyn Nets, given the circumstances that they're in. And then the Phoenix Suns, the Phoenix Suns get their guy in Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant gets to go to the one destination he wanted to go to, which was the Phoenix Suns. Like I said, it's a win-win for everybody. But that's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours down in the comment section below. One last little shameless plug is I did start As It Stands Lakers. It is a channel just like this dedicated to only the Lakers, because the Lakers are my favorite team. And on this channel, as it stands, I talk about all teams, all sports, stuff like that. We have football season coming up, so I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. And I just wanted to make a dedicated channel to the Lakers to give the ins and outs. Now, all the big stuff, all the big news and stuff, I will still post here on this channel. But if you want all the ins and outs and just rumors and theories and just discussions just strictly on the Lakers, link down in the description or in the comment section. Go check out the channel, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.